Okay, so we're good to go here. I'm Derek. This is Jennifer. And this is episode 19 of the Everyday Dog Show. Now, today we're going to talk about some numerous things, but first thing I wanted to always mention is hashtag live if you're watching this now, or hashtag replay in the future. Anyway, so today oh, look at this. Anyway, all right. Now that we're not duplicated, what I'll mention is I had posted a few questions earlier this week about service dogs. Interested in what people thought about certain questions that I had. So the first one was, how many different categories of service dogs do you think there are? So we had numerous answers come through from 8, 6, infinity, at least 2, etc. So Jen, what do you think? Oh, Jennifer, by the way, is our lead administrator, and she helps so much with all the admin, as well as an associate trainer, dog trainer in training. But anyways, pop quiz hotshot, how many service dogs do you think there are?
I like the answer with infinity. I think that as long as the dog has a job to do for its person, it could be a huge number of things that they can work for. What is the answer?
Well, there really isn't one, because it's dependent on how you define a service dog, right? Because if you define it as a working dog, that could classify military dogs, police dogs, like etc., right? Like drug sniffing dogs. Or if a person is meaning service dog, specifically meaning like a service dog that's paired with someone to mitigate their disability, well, then it's a little bit more of a tangible number that we could say. But basically, it's ever growing. So it also depends on, do you categorize and lump in all psychiatric service dogs as one, whether it's a post-traumatic stress assistance dog or um, generalized anxiety assistance
Autism.
dog, autism. Like, is psychiatric one, or is it like there's pieces of it? So like, really, there's not really a number that I would even put out there, because it's also ever kind of expanding, and our ability to get dogs to do and mitigate disabilities and assist people in need is ever growing and changing as well. So like whatever, 10, 15 ish, and that can change. Just depends on how you classify it. So the next question I had, so here's some other ones, like for example, that some people brought up: autism service dog, hearing dogs, diabetic alert dogs, seizure response, like guide dogs for the blind, allergy detection, mobility assistance, post-traumatic stress. Like, these are all great ones. But there's almost like some of them that could have subcategories within them, right? Such as
For
autism, right?
sure.
Like the spectrum can be quite broad, and there might be some other stuff, where the dog is not necessarily. This is another piece, I guess, Jen, is that it's not just like necessarily one. You can call it like say an autism service dog, but the dog might actually provide varying tasks that aren't necessarily all directly to do with autism.
Well, look at Osiris. He does multiple different things for myself. Like he does migraines, but he also does my anxiety and everything else. Those are two different tasking things altogether, but it's lumped in the same dog.
Right. So that's sometimes where it's like, obviously, think of like autism service dog or psychiatric service dog is like a container, but then there can be subcategories of things within that container that the dog could assist with. For example, like I have another client who has a primarily mobility assistance dog, but also helps with psychiatric stuff. So anyhow, the next question that I raised and proposed to people is, do you know the difference between a therapy dog and a service dog? And I'm going to read some of the answers, okay? Because I found this quite interesting. I thought I had
Okay.
mentioned like this stuff quite a bit, but anyway, one answer was therapy is more mental health based, service is more physical disability, for example, blind. Okay, that's one answer. Another one is Therapy dog provides emotional support for things like PTSD or anxiety disorders. Service dogs do physical things such as guide dogs for the blind or to do tasks for wheelchair bound people. So like, for example, 2 out of like the 4 answers had that same idea that therapy is more mental health based and service is more physical, which is, in my opinion, not accurate. From now, it's relative to where you live, right? So, for example, if you lived in a particular state in the United States of America, their definitions might be different. But in Saskatchewan, in particular, for example, like a therapy dog means very different than a service dog does. So let's challenge you a little bit, Madame Jenn. What's a therapy dog?
A therapy dog is a dog that could go into different facilities to help the people around it, say a nursing home, or going into like see kids if they're in a school and like help those kids or help the elderly in the nursing home, or a hospital. Sometimes they have a therapy dog that goes into the hospital to help on the children's ward. All of those kind of things would be a therapy dog.
For sure. And airports is another one, before COVID and stuff, where sometimes if you're in a bigger center airport, you see these dogs walking around and they're literally therapy dogs just to go and kind of assist anyone who might want to just pet a dog, or if they're not, feeling that great. There even used to be like St. John's would get teams to go to like schools like SciAst, I think, or maybe it was the university, I can't remember, but where it's like exam time and the kids are like adult children, someone's child, but younger adults that are stressed out around exams, and it was like super beneficial to kind of help them regulate or kind of decompress a little bit with the affection of a dog. So to summarize, therapy is more derived for people, other people, not so much the handler. So some of these people, what their examples were somewhat accurate. Like therapy is more mental health based. I mean, basically, yes, but for other people.
Yes.
So like a service dog, as far as like our legislation defines, is more of a dog that is paired with a person with a disability, and the dog does specific tasks to mitigate their disability. For example, if someone had some physical mobility issues and the dog helped them stand up, or if the dog assisted by taking off a sock, or if the dog, retrieved items like a wallet or keys from a place to bring them because they have limited mobility, for example.
Medication.
Yeah, for sure. But there is also service dogs for psychiatric assistance. So, yes. For example, post-traumatic stress. So a mental health, that's more mental health based, but still a service dog, because the dogs will mitigate the mental health, disorder, I guess, by assisting the handler or their team member when necessary in specific ways. So I'm going to read another person's post on, or comment on that post, where it says, therapy dogs are trained to aid people in public environments such as facilities, hospitals, schools, businesses. The dogs are brought in to comfort multiple people. They are not trained for one person specifically. So that's a good answer, and I agree. And it's kind of further to what I had said. Now, the other thing this lady mentioned was service dogs are trained specifically to mitigate their handlers' disabilities, whether those tasks be medical alert, mobility assistance, psychiatric tasks, or other disability related task work. They work for one person, the person they're with. And that's a very, this is a very good answer in comparison to other ones that came in for our specific legislation in Saskatchewan. Now, to offer another tier of a little bit of complexity, is there's now emotional support animals. So do you, Jennifer, have any inkling of what an emotional support animal is defined as in Saskatchewan?
Oh boy.
It's okay if you don't.
It would be a dog. It would be a dog that would help just, they're human, but in their own house? Question mark.
Sure. So essentially, it's kind of almost like a hybrid of therapy and service, in the sense of it is for one person, the person that they're with, but the dog does not need to have specific tasks trained. They're basically their physical presence, kind of like a therapy dog, helps the people emotionally regulate and feel better. But there has been, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong on any of this stuff. I'm welcome to, further expanding my understanding of things. But as far as I know, there's been some recent inclusions to emotional support animals in Saskatchewan, as far as legislation goes and write-ups. But basically, sometimes there can be some acceptance for emotional support animals in certain public settings, but there has to be, it's only kind of regulated on a case-by-case basis, and there's some steps to go through to get that. But essentially the difference is emotional support is kind of like a psychiatric service dog with no task training or specific training at all, for that matter, but the dog does help the person feel better. Does that make sense?
It does.
So where was I going to go with that now? I've lost my train of thought.
I don't know.
Anyhow, so that's the three differences, and I think it's worth people knowing because it seems very common that it's difficult for people to understand the differences between the three. So hopefully people will watch this and share with friends or family, or just verbally, or the video for that matter, of kind of a bit of an outline of the differences between. Now, it can get a bit tricky and confusing because depending on where a person resides, the definitions can change. So for example, in a few states in the United States, emotional support animal is actually what we categorize as psychiatric service dog. So it's a little bit confusing. So you really just got to focus on where you're at and what your own government defines each role. So with therapy dogs, they do not have public access rights the same way that a service dog would with their handler. So therapy dogs typically are invited to the premises that they frequent, like long-term care facilities, the airport, schools, etc. They're not able to just like take their therapy dog and go walk through Walmart or whatever because they want to get some groceries. Like, that's not how it works, because they don't essentially have the access rights, because they are not, disabled, where there's an accommodation in the human rights legislation as far as like a person with a disability has full access rights to public settings, typical public settings. And if they need a service animal to assist them to be in public, that they have access rights to bring that animal with them. So it's kind of essentially like if you somewhat compartmentalized, if you were in a wheelchair and you were wheelchair bound because you were physical mobility issues, and you went to the door and they're like, no, you can't have wheelchairs in here. You're like, yeah, right. Like, that would never happen, right? Because they have access rights. So they would go in. So if you now obviously a dog's a living thing, but it's similar in the sense of mitigating a disability that the dog facilitates and assists someone. So that human really has the access rights to bring that service dog with them into that establishment. But anyways, I digress. What I wanted to kind of move on to, by all means, comment on this thread if you have any more particular or specific questions about that, because it is an industry that we are part of and have teams in training to be placed, primarily psychiatric assistance dogs. But anyhow, I wanted to move on to agility, because agility is pretty fun and it's hot as heck often right now. So it's kind of hard to do too much outside for too long. But I wanted to start off by asking you, Madame, have you done agility with any of your dogs before? I know the answer.
I have done agility with my dogs before.
Where did you do it?
Yes, I have. Oh, here's one. I did one as a competitive. I tried a puppy competitive one just
Mhm.
outside of town once. It was not for me, or well, actually, it was more not for Osiris. And then we checked out Melanie's agility class and absolutely love it.
Who's Melanie?
Melanie's our head trainer and manager of the team.
Yes. So Melanie is our lead trainer and operations manager, and she does some fun dog sports like recreational agility. And the reason we define it as recreational agility because it's legit just for fun. I mean, people can compete in agility all they want, and that's totally cool. What we're trying to just offer is a fun mental and physical outlet for the dog and the person attached to the dog to have some fun without potentially, anything on the line because we're not competing. So it's like do as good or as not, whatever. It's all good. We're here to support you and have fun. And it's really just based around have a blast. So yes. So then you had taken some classes with Melanie on recreational agility. And like, how did you find that for Osiris, for example?
Osai absolutely loves the recreational agility. We have we have a great time when we're there together. It helps us bond as a pair, and he the whole group, the whole mentality of the recreational agility is a fun, supportive group. We all encourage each other when it's our turn to run and everything else. And when Osiris decides that he wants to lay down and have a little quick nap in the tunnel, nobody is really judging and going, oh, did you see that? That dog's leaping in the tunnel instead of going through. It's a very great group of people that just want to have fun with their dogs. And the dogs, I brought Nick the one time, he hadn't come yet, my husband, and he'd seen it, and the dogs reminded us of the kids, like little kids going to swimming lessons, and they look over to their mom and they're like waving to their mom because they're so happy that, oh, hey mom, did you see me? That's exactly the same attitude that the dogs have when they see people watching them and stuff. They're like, hey, did you see that? Like, I did good, right? And it's just a solid high five to everybody that is running their dogs in agility. I absolutely love the bonding that it creates with the dogs.
For sure. And something else that people don't necessarily realize that happens is since there's not really any pressure on it, as far as like, kind of like regular dog training classes, even our own, people are a lot more like kind of going in like a bit more self-conscious of like, what if my dog is the worst dog in the class? What if they don't do good? And then of course, like that happens and everyone feels it at times. But with agility, since it's almost like not like obedience type stuff, people just come in more loose and then their dog excels really quickly because the person's calmer, which people don't necessarily always realize how much impact how we feel internally impacts the dog paying attention to you or not. Because lots of times if you get too unsure, insecure, frustrated, anxious, the dog just shuts off and they go into avoidance and they do something else when all you really want them to do is pay attention to you. So that like recreational agility from a standpoint of like, let's just have fun and have a great time, you actually tend to do that, which strengthens your bond and your communication with your dog that people would have never thought of, but it's easy and fun. You're like, oh, this could actually be enjoyable. I don't have to like feel embarrassed or self-conscious, or my dog barked twice while the instructor was saying something. Oh my God, which I understand that feeling, but I feel like there's a perceived like less pressure in that kind of a setting, but you can get
Yep.
really good results. Would you say that's somewhat accurate?
100%. It's amazing. And we shouldn't say that we never compete. That would be false. Every once in a while, Mel will throw in hey, our dogs are running really good just in regular. Let's grab a stopwatch and just for fun, see who can run it the fastest. Well, as soon as Mel grabs the stopwatch, I know exactly that Osai is pulling up the rear because he will literally shut down and have a snooze in this tunnel. He'll run a great run prior, but then he's like, no, we're timing. I'm just going to, and I'm like, oh, whatever. Like it's all for fun. I know that he's going to do it. Mel laughs at it because every time it has happened, seriously, every time. And it's just, yep, we're just having fun. There is no pressure at all. It's great.
But also like, yeah, like competition is fun too, right? Like I'm more of a competitive natured person than I ever had been, because I used to not like to compete, because if I lost, I was sad. Now I'm like, I don't care if I lose, I'm just going to compete. But competition, like a bit of competition is fun too, right? So there's like competition more based agility is great. And I encourage people to do that if they're interested in that. It's just not just not what it is that we're doing. We're just doing it for fun and enrichment and a safe place for the
Well, and some
dogs to
dogs
run
are
around.
actually built for competition,
Yeah, for
right?
sure.
Like you have those dogs that could go out there and knock it out of the park for the competitive ones. And if that's your dog and your thing, high five, go for it. But my dogs are more lackadaisy. So I'm just glad that there's a place that they can go and run and be not competitive.
For sure. There's something else about that now. When you were saying it, something spawned, but I lost it. Should have wrote a note. Anyways, people can just see me struggle through my memory and look at this thing on my nose instead while I'm trying to remember. Anyhow, so with recreational agility, we have like a starter class as well as an intermediate class, and and there's some more advanced stuff, but we are accepting enrollment for a starter class that begins on the 28th or something like that. Do you remember?
Yeah.
Look
The
at my
28th at
calendar.
6 o'clock.
So it's Wednesdays for 6 weeks on July 28th at 6 o'clock for about an hour. And any dog can join that's over 9 months old. There's no prerequisite necessarily of attending any other classes. I mean, it's going to be way better if you had done something. But essentially, the dog doesn't necessarily have to be neutered or spayed either. That's fine. They can be intact. It's really just trying to have some fun in a safe environment that's controlled, where they can be off leash and go through these a series of obstacles and learn to listen to you better off leash. And then also some, have a good time doing so. Is there anything else? For details, you can just, or if you're interested in joining, don't hesitate to just, tag one of us,
Reach
either
out.
Jen, Volk, or myself in the comments, and we can give you some additional information and about registration and cost and all that kind of jazz. Is there anything
We
you want
also
to
have
add?
one spot. Yes, we have one spot open for intermediate agility that starts Wednesday, the 21st at 7.
Okay, perfect. So there's one slot open in there for anyone that has some experience with agility and would like to kind of get back into the groove of things. Yeah, so I think that's about it. Is there anything else you wanted to add?
No, I don't think so.
All right. There's something here. I'm going to, as soon as I end the call, I'm going to remember it and be like, dang, I wish I said that. But anyways, I thank you all for watching this. Whomever does take the time, feel free to comment with any additional questions at the end of this. But otherwise, we'll see you next week, and have a wonderful weekend and stay cool-ish.
Right.
Thanks for coming out, Jen.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Bye.